Could you introduce your team? Mr. Alonso, are we on live? Okay, members, this proceeding is on live. And before you introduce the team, let me take this opportunity, Aria, to remind you and your accompanying staff of the Legislative Body of Evidence Act, Chapter 108, which speaks to every person examined under this act who willfully gives false evidence shall be guilty of perjury. We at this committee take the opportunity to remind all accounting officers coming before us of what this act specifically says, because we do not desire any officer misleading this committee by giving false information. If you are not in a position at the time a question is posed by any member, you can ask the time to provide such accurate information to the committee. We had an unfortunate occurrence at the last sitting of the Public Accounts Committee, where the committee recommended that an accounting officer who came before the committee for a criminal investigation to be launched towards that individual for his misrepresentation of the facts to this committee. This is a very serious committee of the Parliament, and we expect all accounting officers who are charged with the responsibility to man the accounts of those respective agencies on behalf of the people to take it with the seriousness that it deserves. And this committee will ensure that you adhere to your mandate by law in ensuring that you do what is expected of you to do, with the assistance of our technical advisors and the audit office. With that said, you can introduce your team, Ario.
Thank you, Chairman, members, morning. On my right is former Regional Executive Officer, Mr. Dennis Jaikaran. On my immediate left is present Deputy Regional Executive Officer Acting, Mr. Arjun, and next to him is present Regional Health Officer Erica Fort. At the back of me is Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. And I have PAS Finance, present PAS Finance, Region number 3. Next to him is our PPO, present PPO, Region 3, Ms. Harris. And next to Ms. Harris is Ms. Hamilton, former PAS Finance, Region 3. Our present engineer, Mr. Von Solomon. And next to him is our storekeeper, Mr. Ramphal. I must also inform, I'm not certain, sir, but I was made to understand that our permanent secretary will be joining us virtually.
Yes, she did write seeking permission, and permission was granted. And she is presently online. So you have a full complement, I presume. Members, we have 19 paragraphs for 2017 and 18 paragraphs for 2018. And I put all of the paragraphs for our consideration. Remember, Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. Comrade Chairman, as usual, I would like to ask the accounting officer about his program managers. But before I do so, I heard him introducing a young lady that is with us as the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. May I ask if that is accurate?
I'm sorry, Chairman, I'm sorry about that. It's our auditor at the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. My apologies because I did not ask who the person was. I presume that it was and I know what pack you can presume. Right, so.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. I thought the advisor to the Honorable Minister at Local Government would have picked that up. Nonetheless, I did. Sir, I did hear that the regional engineer is here, the regional health officer, and the deputy regional executive officer acting is here with us. may I ask the REO with reference to his two other programs, the Regional Education Officer and the Regional Agriculture Officer? And if there is no Regional Agriculture Officer, can you confirm if the Regional Engineer is supervising both programs, the Public Works and Agriculture?
Yes, the regional engineer is supervising that department also, as the region has one engineer, right? They're superintendent of works. Um, I did not ask the present regional education officer to be present here because when I peruse the queries, the audit queries, none is related to the education.
To education. Thank you, sir. That's my initial questions.
Dr. Mario, you have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we're starting with where we left out last time with drugs and medical supplies. The last time the REO would have indicated that they would have made contact with the Ministry of Health to get the, I'm talking about 7656667 and 896-899, to get the information so that the monies could have been reconciled. Could the REO advise us what progress has been made and where are we with this at this time?
Mr. Chairman, yes, some progress was made, and I'll ask the present regional health officer to address that.
Go ahead, Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, everyone here. With respect to the reconciliation of drugs and medical supplies, what we have is the list that we would have provided before with the drugs that were supplied to the region, as is stated from the MMU, which for 2017 would have amounted to $206,354,084.60. Yes, and well, we also have it for 2018, just to make that reference as well. So we do have some costings from the Ministry of Health with relation to drugs and medical supplies that were issued to the region from the Ministry of Health.
But does that cover all their costs, all the monies that were spent? Or you still have outstanding costs to balance off the monies that were sent to the region and the drugs and medical supplies that you received to equal the cost?
What there are some discrepancies with regards to some drugs that we would have received. There is no costing attached to it. For example, we would have received some sharp containers. There's no costing attached to that. Lodipine, for example, there's no costing attached to that. So to say that this document that we received is a true reflection of the total costing received, I cannot say that. We would have to inquire from the Ministry of Health with regards to that, because the list has some items that reflects that we would have received it, but it has no costing attached to it.
So you would have already written to the chair through you. So you would have already written to the MMU asking for the additional costing to be provided?
A letter was written to the Permanent Secretary asking guidance and provision of information. Some of this information was received. I am not certain if the information would have been pertaining to the question you're asking, sir.
So no letter was sent to MMU,
No, sir.
but that was a request from the PAC. You said you wrote the permanent secretary
The Permanent Secretary.
to assist you with garnering the information.
Yeah.
Are you aware if the permanent secretary had written MMU? On your
No, sir.
Is the permanent secretary online? Can she answer the question?
Which permanent secretary did you write to? Your local government or health?
Health.
You wrote to Health Permanent Secretary?
Yeah.
And you didn't get a response?
We got to some information back from them. That is why I said earlier that I was not certain.
In the letter that you wrote to the Permanent Secretary of Health, was it to also acquire information regarding MMU, to Dr. Mahadia's question, concerning
Information
the remaining
from
drugs?
sorry, sir. Information from MMU pertaining to the 2 years, the expenditures based on the drugs that were supplied to the region.
Yes.
We receive. We have those information, but the information, it was explained the last time that the information would not have been capturing all the drugs that would have been supplied to the region as it relates to costing.
So Chair, Ario, by extension, it means that we need to write another letter to say that the information is incomplete so that we could have the complete information so that you could close that account or that paragraph basically.
Yes, sir, I will do.
Chair, I would like to direct the Ario.
That's a supplemental information you'll have to provide the PSC, and we hope that that can be provided within a week's time. Go ahead, Dr. Mahadia.
I'd like to direct the Ario's attention to paragraph 768, that would be 217. And it was stated there that in the report, 60.467 million expended on drugs and medical supplies by the regional administration. Voucher examination source verification revealed A, 4.151 million worth in drugs and medical supplies purchased in the year could not be traced to the goods received book or bin cards. And B, 9 payment vouchers totaling 10.47 million for the purchase of drugs and medical supplies could not be located and presented for audit. Could the REO say whether the missing payment vouchers were located and what systems are now in place to prevent such occurrence again?
We have been able to locate 3 of those vouchers.
Total in what amount?
Not total.
What is the combined total of those 3 that you recovered?
$9,136,429.
$9,136,000. That means the total here was 14.6 million. So we have quite a lot still outstanding. Could the REO advise us what measures are in place to find the rest? And if it cannot be found, then could the AG advise us where do we go from here? Because what's going to happen, it would become a recurring matter.
Well, we need to know what is his system put in place to prevent that from reoccurring.
We will seek the guidance of the Attorney General Office as it relates to the information, additional information, but at this point in time, what we have now in place is that we have a goods received book in place. Before that, there were no book, or if they were, we could not have found it. So we have that in place, and that would have been able to correct the situation from then. Now.
Okay,
So, Chair,
the
if
goods
I may.
received book, you're saying?
Yeah.
Is
Because it's 2 different things. I think just
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
clarity, right? I think what Mr. Mahadi you did was just put the two together. It's for him to get 14 point something, but that's not the case. It's two different situations because the vouchers that they are accounting for there, they said that they found three, and those vouchers actually total 9 point how much? If you can remind me.
9.1.
136.
9.1, but that, Mr. Chair, goes to B, which is actually saying that 9 was actually totaling 10.470. So you have to subtract the 9.1 that they can account for to see what the total remains, and that doesn't take into
That's
consideration.
1.3.
The 4.1 is not to do with that, those missing vouchers. Want to be clear on that. So we can't sum it together. It's two different situations.
Yeah, but 1.3 is are you saying, Chair, that an exhaustive search was done and those payment vouchers cannot be found? Amounting to 1.3 million.
I will ask the storekeeper to answer that, sir, with your permission.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. We were able to locate all the vouchers for the drugs and medical supply from the sub-treasury.
So you're saying you could cover 10.47 million with the vouchers you have there?
Yeah, we were able to locate all the vouchers from the sub-treasury.
So, Chair, if I may, could the RU advise us, so the drugs and medical supplies that you would be buying from the monies that you will be expending would be for emergency supplies or drugs that that MMU does not have. So if I may repeat what was said previously, that you get from the MMU a list of medications that they don't have and they don't expect to get within a period of time, and that would guide you. But I'm interested, so emergency supplies. And emergency supplies, Chair, would be especially for cases of theater surgeries and stuff like that. So how do we go about currently so that we'll be able not to have situations like these to deal with the real emergency supplies that you have to purchase?
Advice is being provided by the regional health officer. Any request for emergency supply will entails the regional health officer making requests to the regional executive officer through the purchasing department. Providing funds are available at the particular time, we will seek quotations. If it's emergency, it will be difficult to advertise, so we seek quotation and proceed to get the drugs or medical supplies.
Thank you, Ario. So the RHO needs a particular drug. She informs you that less than neostigmine is needed to put patients on the table for surgery, and you would get free quotes and provide the necessary medication, I guess.
Yes, sir, on the same availability.
Thank you, Ario.
Mr. Chair, just on a matter that we were discussing prior in terms of the payment vouchers and the fact that we're being told right now that those vouchers have been located and is in the possession, I just want to make note that those vouchers need to be sent to the audit office. The audit office needs to have a copy of those if that has not happened as yet. It was sent? It was not sent. The audit office is saying that. So it's not just for you guys to come here and say where we found it. This is an audit query, and the audit office needs to, you guys have 3. So the audit office needs to have the copy of the others.
We will ensure the audit office get copies of it.
Today, Aria, we would like the audit office to have that in their possession today.
Yes, sir.
Parliament can assist in getting that photocopy.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Dr. Mann.
Chair, I'd like to move on to 902.
No, but before you move on, with regards to the process of purchasing emergency drugs, where you outline that you get 3 quotations. In the event where the patient requires this drug immediately, what will you do in an instance like that? Where you cannot get 3 quotations?
Well, I haven't encountered, sir. I haven't encountered any situation of that
But it is a
nature.
possibility. You wait till you encounter to make a determination what to do and someone else's life is on the line.
Well, if it's fall under emergency and the RHO advised me that she need the drugs, they are the ones who advises the regional executive officer on the need and necessity of having drugs on hand. And unless he or she does, then there is little I can do. So I agree, yes, that
Can the
there can be
HRO
certain-
say in the event of such an emergency where 3 codes cannot be ascertained to save someone's life, what would the recommendation be?
Well, first, we avoid that situation by having a stringent follow-up that there is at least, in the case of, like, for example, neostigmine, which is a theater drug, that there is at least a 1-day supply there. We do not venture to the point where we have none at hand, no, we have none at hand, and then a patient shows up. But in the event that that happens and there is a true emergency, there are other options apart from purchasing. There are, for example, Region 4 we can contact, and we can share drugs across the region as well through CRIV system. And so in the case of a true emergency whereby our only option is to purchase, to save a life, that would be in a small quantity. I believe that the REO can purchase under a small amount, as an emergency purchase with a single quotation, if I'm not mistaken, because in that case, it is to save a life and not buy a bulk supply. So I presume that would be one option as well, if we need a quantity for a specific patient.
Noted. Dr. Mario?
Chair, if I may. So, yes, you could borrow from GPHC and you could borrow from other hospitals, Diamond and so on. That is what happens. But Chair, I'd like to ask maybe the AG's advice. So rather than buying from, in inverted commas, bottom house pharmacies, could we not pre-qualify persons to buy in these?
Yeah, sir, I don't think we can. No, but sir, I don't think we can utilize that
But I could
terminology,
withdraw
bottom
that,
house
but
pharmacy.
I could withdraw
Can you-
that.
yes,
But
I would like that to be withdrawn.
The advice I'd like to ask the AG is if we could pre-qualify some pharmacies. So in
But
case
wouldn't that
these really
disenfranchise
emergencies.
some pharmacies from growing? I think that recommendation in some regard can disenfranchise some pharmacies and shortchange them in some regard from developing into bigger pharmacies. What, Dr. Mario, what I could, Dr. Mario, your recommendation, I think, should be one in which the REO can write to all of the existing pharmacies in the region and advise them of a drug list so that they of themselves can purchase those drugs in the event. No, but at least everyone will be on the same level playing field. So once they're au fait with the drugs that the regions buy, then they too can equip themselves to be in a position to be a provider to the region. Member Maipa?
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'd like to move to paragraph 780. No, it's not a bottom house paragraph. Sir, this paragraph reads, the Drainage and Irrigation Board account was an account set up for the purpose of receiving funds that were collected as rates and taxes from farmers in the Region 3 Drainage and Irrigation area. May I ask, what year was this account set up?
Are you?
With your permission, could I ask the former REO to answer that?
Thank you, Ario.
Yes, go ahead.
Morning, Chairman and members of the PAC.
Good morning.
I assumed duties in Region 3 as Ario in 2015. And on my assumption of duty, that particular account was in place. It is difficult for me to be able to say when it was established.
So, thank you, Corporate Chairman. So this was an account that was inherited. Can we ask the current accounting officer to provide that information to us or in writing as to when this account was set up?
Yes. Can a week be sufficient, Ario? Will a week be sufficient?
Can the audit office help us out with that? If they can, if they can't, then we can rely on the written information.
We'll ask both agencies to assist.
Mr. Chair, I will have to check back my document.
Yeah. Ms. Chapman?
Hi, Chair. I would like to advise PAC and the RU. He can request that information from the Ministry of Finance to the Accountant General.
Thank you, AG.
You're welcome.
Ario, you're still guided.
Sir,
Thank you.
Corporate Chairman, I see that an analysis of current expenditure for the period under review revealed that 126 transactions totaling 7.172 million were made from or reimbursed to the DNI board account. Further checks revealed that. And my concern has to do with D, 17 advances totaling 1.462 million that were taken in the year 2017 were still outstanding as at the time of audit in July 2018. And according to the bank statement, as at the 31st of December 2017, the balance on the account was 12.762 million. However, since there was an absence of the cash book and bank reconciliations, we were unable to determine the accuracy of this balance. Now, I did take note that corrective measures were put in place after this paragraph was found, and I do know that in reading from the 2018 that there is a cash book in place and corrective measures by way of bank reconciliation. But all the monies that were advanced, that 1.462 million, were all of them recovered?
Yes, Chairman.
And when you say advances totaling that were taken, what were the advances for? And when I say what I'm trying to ascertain, is this an account that benefits the farmers, or is it an account that is there to assist the region? What is the purpose of the account then, if I may ask?
Well, that's it. That's why.
Go ahead, Ario.
Can I ask the former RU to answer?
No, but
Account
sir,
still exists.
so yes, on that basis, thank you, sir. But that, as in you have that account that is in existence right now,
Yes, sir.
and that account has finances in it right now.
Yes, sir.
And right now, that account has a purpose.
Yes, sir.
Can you assist us
Yeah.
with understanding the purpose of the account and what does it really entail? And are you the signatory of the account along with the current Principal Assistant Secretary Finance, or are there different signatories? Can you say if the cash book is there in place and it's the fund is being monitored effectively and efficiently? And were there advances that were given from the account, and for what purpose?
First
Because
of
this
all,
is a special account, right?
no advances are given from that account. I am a signatory to the account.
You
As it-
alone,
Myself and the accountant, an accountant.
the chief accountant?
Yeah.
Okay.
As it relates to the exact functions, I will want to ask the Deputy Regional Executive Officer who has responsibility for finance directly to answer that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, presently we have transactions from the Ministry of Agriculture whereby they disburse payment to the region in the form of checks, Bank of Guyana checks. These checks are being deposited into the account and disbursed to the contractors.
That's the sole purpose?
That is the purpose in which it's being used for presently.
So that's the purpose. These are those checks that come from NDIA to pay for the usage of these mini excavators.
Correct.
Good. So, but
If I may interject.
let me see if I'm understanding this clearly. This is an account that has been in existence for a number of years. We have already established that this account has been in existence since before the former REO took office. And if my memory serves me right, the former REO took office in 2015, October. So that account has been there before that. The account, as stated and guided by the Auditor General, is one that collects rates and taxes from farmers in the Region 3 drainage and irrigation area. So if this account is existing still, then it means that rates and taxes are still being collected. Am I correct?
I'm advised.
So
yes.
the account has money that is outside of monies that are sent to the region via warrants for the payment of these mini excavators.
That is correct.
One purpose is to facilitate the transition from NDIA to Ministry to Region 3 to contractor for the mini excavators.
Correct.
The other purpose, what is that?
The other purpose basically is receiving rates and taxes from farmers.
Yes, and what you do with it?
Presently, the monies are still in the account. It is not being used.
But if you have to use it, what will you use it for? The point I'm making is that one of the finding here is that the transactions were not in keeping with the main purpose of the D&I board account. So my question is, what is the purpose of this account? You have an account established in the region for a number of years, and there's a purpose for this account. It cannot be to just store money, because if the money belongs to the people of Guyana at the 31st of at the end of every year, it is expected to be sent to the consolidated fund. And if that is not if that is not happening, then something else is happening with this fund.
This account is not being surrendered to the consolidated fund. Like I said, presently we are receiving rates and taxes, and if need be that we are to support other D&I activities, we will seek guidance from the HE department.
No, but that's
But presently I'm aware that we're disbursing payments to contractors.
Sir, may I ask the REO, the accounting officer, if his chief accountant, who is a signatory to this account, is present with us?
No, sir.
May I, I think earlier you established that you have your Principal Assistant Secretary Finance.
Yes.
Can the Principal Assistant Secretary of Finance assist our Deputy Regional Executive Officer to provide some guidance to us, please? I know that the DREO is very competent in the field of local government, and I know that that this financial matter, I believe I can get some better guidance from the Principal Assistant Secretary Finance.
Member Maipol, the Deputy Finance said that the proceeds in the account don't go to the consolidated fund.
That's why I'm trying to get some guidance.
I'm confused.
I wanted the PAS Finance to confirm that.
I think let's guide.
I'm still going down the road. Don't.
Mr. Chair, I think that at this point that we're looking at a report. A is an issue that is being identified by the audit office. The audit office said that the transactions were not in keeping with the main purpose of the D&I board account. I think it is only prudent at this time for the audit office to say what they understand the purpose of that to be, hence them highlighting that the transactions here were not in keeping with that purpose. The audit office can't just say it's not with the purpose if the audit office don't have a very clear understanding what the purpose is. So I think it is prudent for us to be advised by the audit office what specifically is that purpose, hence them actually stating this finding.
Okay, can we get the audit office to provide a response to that section of the
Mr.
paragraph?
Chair,
Go ahead, Age.
at present, I don't have the copy of the DNI Board Act, so I will have to provide you with that information.
Yes.
But basically, I think in a region like Region 5 and 6, there's the Water User Association replaced this account instead of having such an account. And I think if when we would have written this, is that this account under the DNI, the money collected in rates and tax, I'll have to check back to see if it's supposed to pay overgrowth to the consult fund and then rebudget for, or they could have had permission to utilize it. According to how we wrote there, it seems that they have permission to utilize it for DNI purposes.
But who gives that permission, Comrade Chairman?
No, as I said, I have to look back at it. I'm not
Because the
certain.
laws of this country, and I'm guided by the Auditor General, the Accountant General, and the Finance Secretary. The laws of this country stipulates that all monies garnered by our agencies at the end of the year, they must be deposited into the consult fund. So I would love to know if permission was granted by whom, because if there's any permission to be given for there to be an account that holds money outside of the consult fund that belongs to the people of Guyana, I believe it's the National Assembly that will repose that authority and not necessarily a single individual or an office. So that guidance will be necessary. But more than that, sir, this purpose of this account, functioning of the account and its current stability in the region, I believe is necessary for us to get some information to understand what is going on with this particular account. Because you're seeing here that it is stated that farmers in the region, they have to pay rates and taxes. And then there's the system of accounting for the rates and taxes that are collected. Rates and taxes means that you're paying the government for the government's land. So one would have thought, or one should think, that these monies ought to go to the consult fund if it falls under the category of rates and taxes. And in terms of the advances, I would like to know what are the advances that were given and what were they given for? So these, and if that is still happening, and if that's one of the purpose for the fund. And I think, sorry if I may ask of your permission, that a comprehensive review, and if I can request of the Auditor General to conduct, through you, sir, and with the permission of this committee, for the Auditor General to conduct a review of the functioning of this fund currently and the state that it is currently in, and provide PAC with some guidance, and that this comes against the backdrop of seeing what is here in this report, knowing what is this in the 2018 and 19 and 20 report also.
Yes, I would really appreciate the audit office assistance in bringing clarity to this conundrum that exists in region number 3, especially with this account. So much uncertainty, and more so a lot of these funds aren't going to the consolidated fund at the end of the year. FS, in light of this revelation, I think we need to be advised by you, and more so the region needs to be advised by you with regards to the proceeds in this fund, and more so why is it that they're keeping it in their custody when it's supposed to be given over to the consolidated fund at the end of the year. FS?
Chair, I don't want to make any conclusive statement at this point. I need to study the and I could get back to the committee next week on this, right? But I need to study it. Essentially, what Member Maipal, Honorable Member Maipal said is correct, but there may be other laws that we need to consider when we are dealing with this particular issue.
Noted.
Right?
So FS, you and the audit office could work collectively.
Yeah, we can work together. Definitely, Chair. I will work closely with the audit office because there may be some other law that that govern this particular fund that I need to examine.
Member
And if there's
Siraj?
any
No,
Yes.
Chairman, I'm not finished.
Oh, yes, yes,
I
AG. Yes, FS, thank you.
Yes, if there's any conflict, I will
Yes.
highlight that. So let me work with the 18. Thank you so much, Chair.
Go ahead, Member Mai.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have a vested interest in this matter, so I want for clarity and for my own understanding to understand correctly
You have a
what we're
vested
doing.
interest, sir. I don't understand.
Very vested.
I'm confused by that.
Vested in the sense of what I found in the Auditor General's report. Not vested in any other way or form, Comrade Siraj. I'm not like you,
Frame
sir.
your words carefully at this committee, sir. Member Siraj, you have the floor.
No, I'm not finished.
Well, go proceed. sir.
I want to understand directly what is it, because the concern that I have, and one of the functions of the Public Accounts Committee, is to ensure that there isn't a repeat of what is found in the Auditor General's report, and additionally to ensure that they are full compliance with the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act of 2003, the Procurement Act of 2003, the Audit Act, the Stores Regulations, and all the regulations and laws governing finance of our country. So I am asking, sir, for the committee's permission for the Auditor General to do a comprehensive review along with the Finance Secretary of the account in its current state, and to provide us with information as it relates to the account as is currently, and what is in it, and if there are laws that govern them keeping the money away from the consol fund, and the purpose and all the likes as is current state, sir.
That is the position that was already put, and the Finance Secretary has agreed to work with the Audit Office in bringing your concern, your vested interest in this particular issue to a finality. So the FS and AG, would a week be sufficient for next Monday?
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
we can we put that for 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Okay, the following Monday.
Sir,
Member Maipo, you
I
still
was
have
going
the
to another
floor.
paragraph, but I don't know if you're going to give Comrade Siraj.
Yes, I am going to give it.
Okay.
Member Siraj, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, 769, 2017. It stated, Mr. Chairman,
Proceed.
please bring order to this meeting. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. A contract was in 769-2017. A contract was entered into for the sum of $7.4 million to effect repairs on the motor grader. My question is, what was the basis for this contract?
Go ahead, Ario. Can you put on the mic, sir?
Chairman, could I ask the regional the regional engineer if he could answer that question?
Okay. State your name for the record, sir.
Good morning, all protocols observed. My name is Vaughn Solomon. This machinery, at that time we were encountering some mechanical issues that would require these extensive repairs at this time.
So, Mr. Chairman, was any determination made as to what would be the extent of the repairs needed?
Go ahead, sir.
At this time, yes, some diagnostic tests were done on the grader before we would have received the estimate for the works that is needed on the grader.
This contract was advertised?
I cannot recall that. I wasn't involved in the tendering process at here.
Was it tendered out? No, Mr. Chairman, apparently there is no answer forthcoming, but this contract was to effect
Hold on.
repairs for
Can the
this.
REO state if there was a contract concerning this award?
Could I ask the deputy, I'm sorry, could I ask the former REO that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, at this stage, it is difficult for me to recall, but because as explained by the regional engineer, that based on the diagnostic test that were carried out, and because of the need of farmers to have this piece of equipment that would have been about 40 years old and would have undergone prior to that repair, other repairs, we thought it fit that based on the diagnostic test that were done, that the need of farmers should be fulfilled. And that is an explanation to what the engineer would have said. But to recollect as it relates to the advertisement or any contract, public advertisement, it is difficult for me to see that.
Mr. Chairman, I totally agree with the former REO that this piece of equipment is essential for the maintenance of especially access to farming areas. And a diagnostics was done, works to the value of $7.4 million were determined to put this motor grader into operation. But my question is that if this was done, why is it that at the end of the contract, the motor grader was still not operationalized? And that should have been by the end of December. By April 2018, it was still not been put into use. And then a further contract to the value of $8.5 million was entered into. Now, if it was determined after doing the examination of this essential piece of equipment that $7.4 million would have sufficed to make it operational, 5 or 6 months after it was still not operational, then how did we arrive now at a further contract of $8.5 million in the year 2018?
Could I ask the engineer or?
Go ahead, sir.
Though I may not be a mechanical engineer, I'm a civil engineer. I would have to rely on the advice would be given to me by these by who would have looked at the machine at that time. What I can say is that at that end of the first contract, some other issues would have come up that would require further works on the machinery at that time too.
Well, Mr. Chairman, well, it shows that the analysis that was done at the beginning was flawed.
We cannot make that assumption, sir. We cannot make that assumption.
I am making the assumption on the basis that we were told that a diagnostics was done. Based on that, the diagnostics would have been done with an objective of making this piece of essential equipment operational. The amount of $7.4 million was determined to make it operational. A contract was entered into, and that contract had, of course, would have ended in December. By April of 2018, this piece of equipment was still not operational, which means that the analysis that was done was insufficient. It was not exhaustive. It did not result in this piece of machinery being put into operation 6 months after. Hence, another intervention needed to be done. And it's on that basis I'm saying that the analysis that was done is in 2017 was not proper because
Sir.
it did not resulted in the expected outcome of this essential piece of equipment being put into operation.
Sir, I don't want to agree with that. The analysis can be to the T, but the contractor failed to execute it to the degree of what the analysis requested. So a doctor makes a diagnosis and say you need a surgery. It doesn't mean that the surgeon will do an efficient job. But the diagnosis was correct.
Mr. Chairman, if it was correct, that analysis would have influenced the award of a contract with the expected outcome of making this piece of equipment operational. It was not. And you had to do it again because it was not properly done in the first instance. It was not exhaustive. It did not realize the outcome. So a larger contract had to be entered into in the year 2018 of $8.5 million.
Which led to it working.
So, and that would have formed, that on that basis, Mr. Chairman, I'm saying that the first analysis was not conclusive or exhaustive. So I wouldn't say flawed. It was not exhaustive. It did not realize the outcome that we were anticipating when we signed that contract. And that is what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman. So this, I see here that this motor grader was made operational, but of course after a second contract was entered into, and this second contract went to the same contractor. So obviously, this second contract was also not advertised. It was a sole sourcing. Was approval given for this second contract to be sole sourced to the person doing the repairs?
I'm not seeing sole sourcing in the document here. You're presuming that that sole source was done? Can we ask the REO if that was
It was given
done?
to the same contractor, Mr. Chairman.
He was the lowest responsive bidder.
Here's my question.
Can the REO state if it was an advertisement for the contract?
Could I ask the former REO to answer that, sir?
Go ahead, REO.
Mr. Chairman, just to answer the question, I cannot recall, but I just want to explain the operational procedures of any piece of heavy-duty equipment. A piece of heavy-duty equipment would require three major aspects of its functionality. One would be mechanical, two would be the hydraulic system, and the third one would be the electrical system. And so once there is a diagnostic test done, and there is a determination that it is a mechanical issue, then those mechanical issues are definitely going to, based on the age of that particular piece of equipment, would lead to find out further anything with the hydraulic system and the electrical system. And therefore, when that would have been discovered after the first diagnostic test would have been done, there was absolutely need for what was done in May to be done in an effort to what I would have said early on to satisfy the demands of the farmers and to remind this Public Accounts Committee that a 40-year-old piece of equipment at that time would have been to service the entire Region 3, including Wakenham and Legway.
Mr. Chair.
Member Dr. Mario?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'm still on the, Mr. Chairman, I said this is an essential piece of equipment. but we're following procedures here that has to do with accounting for public funds. And all I'm saying is that having done the diagnostics to make this piece of equipment operational, first, there should have been the advertisement for the job. Having done that, you would have selected the best person to execute the reports. But first of all, you would have had to do, and that was done, the diagnostics, or do an evaluation of the extent of the job that needs to be done. And that will give you an idea as to how much money is needed. So I'm not saying that this piece of machinery is not essential. I totally agree with that. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, I think that in maintenance of access, especially Fairweather roads, a crucial piece of equipment is a motor grader. A motor grader can do so much more work in an 8 hour than a bulldozer. So I'm not questioning the decision to make this piece of equipment operational. All I'm questioning the way it was done, because it raises questions as to how the contract was awarded, why it was not completed in the first instance, why you had to go for a second contract to make it operational. And those are the questions I was asking. I was not in any way questioning whether this piece of equipment is needed or not. I think it is very much needed.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead, Dr. Mahdi.
same 769. So since the REO cannot remember, the former REO cannot remember the process that was gone through, I'd like to ask the current REO if there are any documents that are there, if it could be provided to the PAC, and that will set that matter at rest. I'd also like to ask if the grader is working, if it's working at this time providing a service. And if not, is it working at this time, REO?
Yes.
Okay. So we are it's working, and I guess Member Siraj is very happy about that. So I'd like to ask that the documents that might be there, if they are there, if they could be provided to the PAC. And Chair, I had wanted to go on to 902 when Member Paul stopped.
Yes, sir.
It will be provided now during the break or so.
Thank you.
We have the documents.
Paul?
Yeah, Chair, I wanted to know
Which paragraph, sir?
the same paragraph, the same grader. How long has this grader been done before the decision was taken to fix it? And what is the cost for a new grader? Because I'm sure those are things that would have led to the decision of resurfacing or fixing this piece of equipment. Piece of essential equipment. Critical.
Vital.
For the rice farmers.
Just ask questions. Critical piece of information. Critical piece of information. Critical piece of issues.
Chairman, I would want to ask the regional engineer if he can answer that question.
I'm wondering if you have a regional information officer there.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, well, I would have transferred into the region 2017, and at that time, the grader was not at full functional capacity. And also for the other question, as in the costing of a new grader, I would have done some checks earlier this year and last year also, as we were budgeting. And I think MacCorp would have quoted me for a 150, around $50 to $60 million.
Was it 50 to 60 million?
$50 to $60 million, somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact price, but it's around that range.
Same size grader?
That is a 150 grader. This one here is a 120G, so this would have been a more modernized grader.
Which one? The one?
The one that MacCorp would have quoted me for at that time.
$50 million?
Yeah, but so can the former REO help us, sir, to understand the period of time this grader was done, and because I know the grader is up and about, and I know that the money that was spent there is a small amount in comparison to what is a new grader, and I know that grader that was done is also doing a fantastic job in the region. So can the REO, the former REO, help us to understand how long it was down? Because that also could be the reason why the cost was that high if they fix it when it was already when it was down.
Thank you,
As opposed to have it sitting there.
Chairman. On my assumption of duties in October 2015, on the inventory of heavy duty equipment, that piece of equipment, the grader, was found. It existed then physically, but in terms of its operation, as you try to ensure that it gives service to the farmers, it became difficult. It was working, but to a 5% production per month. And so that is the answer I want to give to PAC as it relates to the question asked.
Noted. Member Siraj.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can I go to 782?
I got questions before that. Mr. Chair, I got questions before that. 772 and 902.
Go ahead, Dr. Mahdi.
Those are the ones that I had wanted to continue the drugs and medical supplies.
780.
772
772.
and 902. Mr. Chair, here they are talking about expired drugs, and can the accounting officer say whether the expired drugs were gotten rid of? But interestingly here, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read from 902, Versailles Health Center. A small quantity of expired drugs was evident, while the drugs were stored for public consumption were in a cupboard. Very congested, no labels to differentiate. Further drugs were stored in a room with no AC, electrical point and stand fan both out of order. At certain times, the day becomes very hot, and obviously those drugs would become not viable in 2018, right? Mr. Chair, interestingly for me, the last sentence is, this matter was reported in 2017, but no action was taken to have this issue resolved. I would like the former REO to say why nothing was done to resolve this issue then, and to find out from the current REO what systems are in place to ensure that all the storage of our drugs and medical supplies that cost a lot of monies, that they are stored in conditions in which they're supposed to be stored, the supplies at least in an area that is ventilated, and the drugs and medical supplies in an area that is cool enough to keep their viability over the period of time for which they're stored there.
Go ahead, Ario.
As it relates to the present storage facilities, there have been improvement with regards, based on what was referred to in 2017 and 2018, there would have been an immense lot of improvement because we would have consulted with the Ministry of Health with regards to the way forward on this, and I would want to ask my RHO to go in details of what we did and what we continue to do.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, Chairman. With respect to adequate storage facility, for example, Versailles Health Center has undergone an extension whereby we paid attention to proper ventilation to the extended area as well. In addition to that, we would have also recently undergone some procurement to ensure that centers that require air conditioning, we are in the process of ensuring that those centers have adequate air conditioning, and we would have already done a regional assessment of all our health centers to try to improve storage for drugs and medical supplies, amongst other things. So we would have also for the hospital, done an extension to and improved in our temperature control in terms of air conditioning and so on for our drug bond at the hospital as well.
Richard, could you advise through the REO chair whether you have these checks that are being done and documented as to the temperature that is there on a daily basis to ensure that you are meeting, just as how you store vaccines, that the drugs and medical supplies are also maintained at that temperature?
I'd ask the RHO.
At this point in time, I would have to verify if it is being done on a daily basis. What I do know is happening is that we have a system in place whereby the pharmacist, she would do routine checks around the facilities to ensure that there are proper measures in place. To say that we have daily temperature checks, I cannot verify that at this moment.
And share the other part of the question. Why was the matter was reported in a 2017 report? Nothing was done 1 year after.
I ask the former REO.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, let me say to Public Accounts Committee that not that nothing was done, but there was a relationship, cordial relationship with the staff of our Sale Health Center and the West Demerara Regional Hospital Pharmacy that provided the opportunity for the storage of essential drugs and medical supplies that required particular levels of temperature to be stored at West Demerara Regional Hospital Pharmacy. And then, as requested by the health center, based on the day of whatever clinic they might have, those drugs and medical supplies would have been so sent. And that was the relationship, having discovered and heard of. But to say in this report that nothing was done, it was not the case as reported. But there were systems put in place on a level of cordiality to allow for the safe storage.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so
go ahead, sir.
My understanding, the area is saying that this report is wrong and it was not corrected, because this report clearly states, the AG's report, this matter was also reported in the year 2017. However, no action was taken to have this issue resolved. That is one. And the second thing is that the REO is therefore saying that no drugs were kept at the Versailles Health Center. If needed, it had to be sourced from the West Demerara Regional Hospital. Am I understanding that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, let me just explain what I said earlier. I clearly said that there was this cordial relationship, and the drugs and medical supplies that needed to be stored at particular temperature would have been kept by the West Demerara Regional Hospital Pharmacy. And on a daily basis, depending on what clinic is being held that day, those particular drugs and medical supplies would have been taken to or collected by the staff of the board. That is it that I said earlier. Not that I said that nothing was. And to say in terms of this, Mr. Chairman, that I have never made any reference to that the report was wrong. That is an interpretation. What I'm saying is that what we did, and I'm not including anything or any statement to implicate the audit office.
So, Mr. Chair, sorry to belabor the point, but a health center has got to have drugs and medical supplies, and putting in a point, an electrical point, and a stand fan, and to take 1 year and not do it, I think speaks volumes as to the kind of it, for me, what was happening at Versailles Health Center. And to be taking a health center functions every day except weekends, and a health center could also get emergencies. And in a case of an emergency that comes to the health center, an asthmatic patient, for example, or a patient with a heart attack or a beginning heart attack, angina, but to take that patient from there to West Dem or to go for the drugs from West Dem to there, and these are emergencies, and these drugs have got to be stored in certain conditions. Really means that somebody does not understand necessity for these medicines to be there at the health centers. I know I'm not talking about an ideal, but I think something pointed out in 2017, something as simple as electrical point and fan, and not fixed in 2018, means a lot, or says a lot.
If I could,
Go ahead.
on the same matter, I would just like to have some clarity also, because I hear what Dr. Mahadio is saying, and I want some clarity as to the fact, I think the regional health officer gave an update to say that the building was further extended. However, I didn't hear any mention of an air conditioning unit being put into that place. Was an air conditioning unit put into the building now that it has been extended?
I would have mentioned that an extension was done, and we would have recently undergone procurement for air conditioning units.
Procurement for
So correct, and that health center is one that a unit was procured for. We're in the process of retrieving the air conditioning units from the supplier, for which one will be installed at that center.
Okay, so my next question is, Mr. Chair, is right now for drugs and medical supplies that needs to be stored at a particular temperature, how is that being done right now? Is it still utilizing the same cordial relationship that the former REO just spoke to? Is it a case in which the West Dem Hospital is still storing drugs that needs to be stored at a particular temperature right now?
I am not aware of the cordial relationship as it is right now. What I do know is that, one, we would have removed the expired drugs which were taking up space. This would cause an increase in temperature for the other drugs there, since you would have had, let's say, unwanted materials with the drugs. So the drugs now are stored in a more spacious environment, for which there is the point and the fan available as well in the unit. So the temperature of the facility is at an adequate level at this point in time. They do have a fridge available as well, so there is storage for the drugs at that facility. I am not aware of drugs being transported on a needs basis to that facility.
So as it is, sir, I just want to be clear on this, sir, because I wouldn't like to know that we are exhausting a point that during 2017, and then we have a similar situation that we're still dealing with, because the whole purpose is for us to move forward for the betterment of the Guyanese people. So I'm understanding. I just want to be clear that there is no drugs, well, you should say based on her understanding, being stored at the West Dem Hospital for Versailles Health Center. So the actual concern Dr. Mahadio has, she's saying that concern should not be. But I am not a medical person, sir, but I am thinking that when we say a particular temperature for storage of certain drugs and medical supply, then we cannot just assume, well, oh, you put a fan in there so it can be there. So I am still of the belief, it is my personal opinion, that once a drug is to be stored at a particular temperature, you cannot just rely on a fan or proper ventilation for that. And you would have to have that air conditioning unit in place to actually regulate that. So it leaves me to only to think, if I can say that much, that if those drugs are to be stored, it has to be stored at the other place. But I know that there's a fridge there that I'm not seeing any mention of a fridge or a situation of not having a fridge here, but I guess you are saying that the fridge was not there prior?
I will not be able to speak on 2017 if there was a fridge there or not. There
Okay.
is a fridge there now.
Okay, so
So, Chair, just to clarify, so there are some medicines, for example, insulin, some of the liquid medicines for asthma and stuff like that, that needs cold storage. If you have an AC that is functioning well, it could be stored there, but it could also be stored in a fridge at the temperature, right? So once you have cold storage, right? But my issue here, Chair, is that these simple things were recommended in 17 could have been fixed at minimum or nearly zero cost for 2018, but it wasn't done. And I think it's a lesson we have to learn. Forget about 17 and 18. Now, when these issues are pointed out in the report, it is pointed out so that something can be done about it.
So what makes the bond suitable for the storage of drugs? Space,
One is
AC unit, and a
one
fan.
is space, and then there, for example, your gauze and these things could normal room temperature. Some of the tablets even normal room temperature. But there are some drugs that have to be at a lower temperature, right? And they're classified. And so this is why, Chair, maybe I think we need to take a walk into the bond at the MMU, not Sussex, right? And see how it is laid out, because based on temperature, that is how you have your drugs and some of your supplies.
So it should have a temperature gauge,
Yes.
not just an AC, because the AC unit fluctuates in temperature.
Yeah, and not only that, when they have, the temperature has got to be recorded regularly. There's a schedule that the temperature has got to be recorded, that it is kept at this temperature. That's how you know that the medicine is potent, the potency of the medicine is there.
Noted. Do we have any additional questions for this agency? Go ahead, Member Sirat.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. 782, 2017. Mr. Chairman, it is stated here in the Auditor General report that 7 contracts were reviewed and the findings for one, there were deficiencies for each one of them, one or more deficiencies for, I don't want to read the entire paragraph, Mr. Chairman. There are one or more deficiencies for each one of the contracts. One being no contract documents were seen. 2, the contract agreements were not in keeping with the approved standard billing contract. 3, they were lumping together of some of these jobs. 4, sums were used to pay for other works. My question, Mr. Chairman, to the accounting officer, why the contract documents for some of these works were not provided for audit for the year 2017? I'm not going to go into the other issues, just this one.
Go ahead.
I can't answer that question, why it was not provided in 2017, but we have it now. Could be provided to PAC. I'm going to ask the former RA to answer why.
Go ahead, Aria.
Mr. Chairman, the mere fact that the documents are here now, the documents would have been there then, and therefore the check for it whoever was supposed to provide it or whoever was supposed to collect that information, maybe at that time, did not have the opportunity. But because it is here now, it had to be there then.
Mr. Chairman, a clarification. I agree if the documents are here now, it should have been there then, but it was not presented for audit. The clarification I'm seeking from the current RO is whether he's making reference to the documents highlighted in the 2017 report as it relates to, or he's speaking about what obtains now.
I would like to ask the engineer if he can answer that, sir.
What I would have met here in 2017 is that the standard bidding, sorry, yeah, what I would have met in 2017 is that the standard bidding document where we would have formulated our contracts from, that was not being done at that time. What would have been done at that time was a contract agreement, which would have had the different clauses and so forth in it. So what I'm assuming, what they said here, that no contract documents were seen, would have been the other parts of the contract document, not the agreement alone. That would have been things like the special conditions of contract, the general conditions of contract, the technical specs and so forth. I cannot say why those weren't presented or were not there at the time of the audit, but the documents that we would have had here now is a contract agreement at that time.
I just want to caution us so that we don't speculate which documents were not seen or not. Let us not make that speculation unless it is clearly stated which documents were not seen. We cannot make that speculation.
Mr. Chairman,
but how do you keep the records? What we would have observed at this PSC is that some accounting officers could not have accounted for records, important records to assist the audit office in getting their job done. What systems do you have in place presently to ensure that the audit office is furnished with all of the necessary documentation to do their audits? Do you keep only physical records?
Presently, sir, what we are doing is that every contract, there's a file. With each contract that would contain, first of all, is an advertisement for that particular job, then the copy of the bidding document, and copy of each document that relates to the particular job in a file that is named after the project or whatever. We are keeping that presently. I will have to ask the engineer as it relates to if we have soft copy of those documents. What I know, we have Gantt charts, which are soft, to represent how the project moves. But I will have to ask.
Dario, you are the accounting officer. Every document you are supposed to have copies of those documentation, not the engineer.
I can assert, sir, that we have copies, hard copies of the documents in file.
What the PSC had recommended to several accounting officers who came before, and agencies that came before the Public Accounts Committee to mediate this issue that keeps reoccurring, is for the agencies to make virtual copies and stored virtually as well. So you have the physical copy and you have the virtual copy. So you can always reference the virtual copy if for some reason the physical copies cannot be made, because we don't want a reoccurrence of the same issue keep brewing at the PSC where documents cannot be found. So you store it electronically as well. So this is also a recommendation the PSC is putting to your region to ensure that you store documents electronically, scan those documents, all of which that you have in your position. And I suggest that you should backdate it from when you took office. Go back in all of the files that you set to PSC that exist and make electronic copies and store it. So that when it comes to the updated reports where you have to give account for your years, documents will be made available either in the physical form or the electronic form. It must be accessible. All right? Yes, Member Siraj.
Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Just to give
Go
some.
ahead, Member.
Just to give some clarity when it comes to storage, I think I just must say that when we're storing soft copy documents, we do not just store soft copy documents on things like flash drives and external hard drives and on your laptops or those systems, but more so in the clouds, and use those type of drive storage to store your info on, because there's no point in just making a soft copy if you have it on an external hard drive on a specific computer system. You have to store it in the cloud. So just to be specific on that.
Yes, that is well accepted, and you're so guided, are you?
Thank you. That is noted and will immediately be put in place.
Yes, appreciate it. Members, do we have any additional questions for this agency? There being no further questions, Ari, I want to thank you and your team for making an appearance before the Public Accounts Committee. We trust that all of the recommendations that were put, particularly those with record keeping, is adhered to, and the advice, the information, the supplemental information, which you are to provide the Public Accounts Committee. We are expecting you to do so within a timely manner. And to make copies, you send it virtually to the clerk of the PAC. And how many copies? And you make 25 copies of each of the supplemental information and send it to the clerk of the Public Accounts Committee.
Yes, sir. Will be done.
Thank you once again, and do have a blessed day.
And thank you, sir.